Good morning, students. This is your economics teacher Lakshmi Vyas, and I'm here today with the second chapter of statistical part of economics, which is collection, organization, and presentation of data. This is the first part of the chapter. We'll complete this chapter in two different parts. So, let's start our first part. In this chapter, our area of discussion will include these points. The very first is statistical inquiry, under which we'll learn what are the different stages of statistical inquiry. Secondly, we will discuss about data. The most important term of statistical economics is data. We will use this term data and explain it properly. Under this data, we will discuss different types of data from different ways of classification. And the most important way of classification, which is the source from where the data is collected, and that will give us the two most important types of data, which is primary data and secondary data. Under that, we'll go through the differences between primary data and secondary data. Then we'll learn about different methods of collecting primary data and different sources of collecting secondary data. Lastly, in this part, we will go through the techniques of data collection. So, let's start our very first part. Statistical inquiry. Statistical inquiry means a systematic process of collecting and analyzing the data about some group of people or object by using statistical techniques. What does it mean? This means statistical inquiry means a process. In that process, what we do? We collect the data, we analyze them, and at the end, we interpret that. For example, if I want to inquire how well are you all studying economics, what I can do? I can conduct an examination. So that conduct of examination is statistical inquiry, and that will be a systematic process. How? First of all, I have to plan, I have to prepare the question, I have to give to you all so that you can answer. Collect the information in the form of your answers. After correction of those answer scripts, I will get some marks which will be allotted to you, which you will score, and that will be the data. Once I collect the data, I have to arrange them, I have to organize them, I have to process them, and then after analyzing them, I can interpret whether you are doing well or not in statistics and or in economics. So that entire process is called statistical inquiry. Now, the stages of statistical inquiry. You should know all the stages. You don't need to go through in detail about any of the stage. We will discuss some of the stages as our part of the chapter, but in this portion, the question will only include these 9 steps. What are the stages? The very first is planning of statistical inquiry. Planning includes the main objective, the scope, and the population to be studied. What does it mean? For example, the example which I have given for statistical inquiry, that will include planning. Now, first of all, my purpose. What is the purpose? The purpose is to check how well are you studying. Secondly, the population. That means the total area from where the data will be collected. That is called population, the universe. So for me, the class of 11 commerce will be the population from where I will collect the data. So that is under the planning. That means where I will conduct the data, the inquiry, from where will I collect the data, that comes under the first heading, planning of the statistical inquiry. Then comes the sources of data collection. There can be primary source or secondary source. I can collect the data myself by conducting the exam, or I can use your marks of previous examination to use to check how well are you preparing, how well you have prepared till now. So that is the secondary one. We'll discuss these things in later in the second part. Then comes the technique of data collection. We have to collect the data in different forms. There are different methods. I'll discuss each one of them separately. After that comes the execution. Till now was the planning. In the fourth stage comes the statistical inquiry, which includes The collection of data means the way I will collect the information from the students. Then comes processing. I have to arrange them. Organization, that means collected data should be written according to roll numbers or according to names. There are different methods through which we can organize the data, and which is the part of our chapter in second part. Then comes the analysis or interpretation, means I can calculate the average and say that the 11 commas is performing. Suppose if I take a 10 marks exam and on an average I'm getting that most of the students are getting near 7 and 8. So I can say that students are performing not so good but not bad at all. So 7, 8 marks are coming. So it is average. It is rather, we can say it is above average. So that is called interpretation of data. Using that I have to prepare a report, and then the last one is presentation of report, which is the mark sheet which you get after exams. So in that way a statistical inquiry completes. So what you need to learn from here, you need to learn the definition and the names of the stages which is given in this slide. This it. In your book it's given in too much detail, you don't need to go through that. Just you need to understand the steps and learn the names. So the second part, data. As I told before, that data is the most important term for statistics. What does it mean? Data are numerical descriptions of certain observations or things. For example, here also the exam is used. Example is marks secured by a student of class when collected is known as data. Or another example, if you want, if I write down the ages and heights of all the students in the class, then that aggregate of these numbers will be considered as a data. As I told you, statistics does not mean a single information. If I say that height of student A is 5 feet 2 inches, that is not data. Data means with respect to names, and I write the corresponding heights of many students, then that aggregate, the total one, is called data. Different classifications of data are done. The first one which is given is raw data. Raw means which is not processed. Yes, raw data means the mass of data which has not been organized numerically. We have not arranged them in any way. That is called raw. Just opposite of raw is ordered data. Ordered data means when the raw data are arranged in a particular order, maybe increasing order, maybe decreasing order, maybe alphabetical order, any order, they are called ordered data. So the example, like if I write the height of 50 students of a class according to roll wise, it forms a raw data. If I write different companies name and their annual reports, okay, these are, once they are written in an arranged way, they becomes ordered data. Like if I write them according to their alphabetical order or according to their growth of performance, in that way. Internal data and external data, again it is a classification according to the category of from where the data is obtained. Like internal data means which is obtained from the internal records of an organization, and external which is coming from outside agencies. Like if I get the number of cars sold in in Delhi during a particular month, if I get that information from the Transport Authority of Delhi, then that is external data. If I get the same data of number of cars sold by a particular company, which is given by the company's record, then that becomes internal data. So internal, the source is from the organization itself. External means the source is outside. Till here was general terms which we use for data. Next comes the most important part of data. What is that? Primary data and secondary data. What is primary data? Basically, we have two important sources of data collection. One is primary data and second is secondary data. Primary source of data means when we collect the data directly from the responded. The example which I have given you, in order to check your performance, if I am conducting an examination, I am directly taking information from your performance, then that data is primary data. Now, if my collected data of class 11 is being used by any other teacher in class 12 to see how well a student is performing in economics, then that will become a secondary data. Secondary data means the data which is not collected by the investigator himself, but it has already been collected by someone else, and the investigator has obtained it from some records of other and using it for their own purpose. So basically, primary data means originally collected data in the process of investigation. On the other hand, secondary data means the data which is collected from other person and used. So secondary data is basically second hand data. And as the name says, primary data is a first hand data which is collected by the concerned investigator for the first time. And when the first time collected data is being used by someone else, it becomes secondary data. Let's do an important question which can come from this chapter, which is the difference between primary data and secondary data. Point wise, let's see the difference which is given in the column way here. Primary data are original in nature. Secondary data are not original in nature. Why? Since primary data is first hand data and they are collected by the investigator from the source of their origin directly, they are original. And secondary data are not original because they are collected by some other person or agency and they are second hand data. So in terms of originality, we can see there is a difference between primary data and secondary data. Primary data is original, secondary data is not original. The second difference, primary data is expensive to collect. Yes, it is. Why? Because when we collect the data from the source directly, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes money to collect the data. As the example given, if I conduct an examination, the process is long, it is time taking. It will take energy of both students as well as teacher, and it will consume some amount of money as well. We will use paper, we will use, if I take online exam, then also we will use internet. So it is costly to collect in terms of time, energy or money. On the other hand, collecting secondary data is less expensive. Why? Because it is already obtained from the journal, from the reports, from the source. Directly we have to take the information. So collecting secondary data is less expensive as compared to primary data. The third difference, primary data is more reliable. Since the person who is the investigator of any statistical inquiry is collecting the primary data himself, so it is reliable. On the other hand, secondary data is already collected by someone and we are using it for our own purpose. That means we cannot rely them much. So it is less reliable. There can be manipulation done by the concerned person who has collected it. If I collect the secondary data from internet, maybe the data when was uploaded, not uploaded correctly. There was an error. So it is not that much reliable as compared to primary data. One more difference is there, suitability. Primary data as collected by the investigator himself is suitable because it is collected according to the purpose of these statistical inquiry. Whatever be my purpose, accordingly I will collect my data. On the other hand, secondary data is collected by someone else and I am using it for my purpose. So it may not suit up to that extent. So we may need to adjust some time to suit the objective of our use in case of secondary data, which is not there in primary because it is done by the investigator himself for own purpose. So the difference between primary data and secondary data is very important. Learn these points. I've given in very small single line points. You can learn it from here or you can jot down from the books as well according to your wish. Then comes the next part, which is methods of collecting primary data. Here, 5 different methods of collecting primary data is given. The very first method is direct personal investigation or interview. What happens here? In this method, investigator collects the information directly from the informants, means from the respondent. The person who conducts the inquiry is called investigator. The person who gives the response is called respondent or informant. So what happens here? Investigator contacts the person from where he need to collect the data, and directly from that, one to one, he collects the information. The example which I have given is direct personal investigation. I have to give the question paper to each one of you. You will answer that and I will analyze that. That is one to one direct personal investigation. In this way method, we get the most appropriate informations. So this is the one which gives the highest accurate level of data. What is the problem here? The problem is that this method is very expensive and time consuming. Why? In such cases when we have large number of people from where we need to collect the data. This data collection method is time consuming also. When we have to take interview from a large number of people, it takes too much time. So direct personal investigation method is very good. It is giving us very good result, and it is always original, fairly accurate and reliable as well. But the problem is that it can only be used when the number of people from where we need to collect the data is not so large. Then we can use this method, one of the best method it is. The second method is indirect oral investigation. What happens here? Sometimes the required information is collected not directly from the respondent, but indirectly from other persons or any witness. In this method, getting information from third parties, not from the direct person. That is why it is called indirect oral explanation. For example, a person who is addicted to alcoholic drinks may hide the information about his drinking habits. What happens in such a situation? The required informations may be sought from the neighbors and the friends of the respondent. And this method is mostly used by the committees and commissions appointed by the government. And it can cover large number of witness and opinion, and then experts can also use that. So it is relatively less expensive method in terms of time, money and effort. But there is always a possibility of personal bias and motives for the witness who can affect the reliability and accuracy of the information. The one who is giving the information to the investigator, who is not involved in the process, that person may be biased, that person may have some other objective, so that can affect the reliability of the data and the accuracy of the data. So indirect oral investigation method is less costly, but the problem is it can be less reliable, it can be biased. So that is the problem of indirect oral investigation. From each of the method, you need to understand how the method works, what are the positive points and what are the negative points. That's it. The third method is information from local agents or correspondents. What happens here? Here, the correspondents or the local people collect the informations in their own way or style, and then they give this to their higher agency. This method is suitable when there is a regular and continuous information covering a wide area is required. How? A simple example in information from local agents and correspondent is news channels. Each and every news channel have their local correspondents and agents everywhere. They gives the immediate information to the news channels. What is good in this method? The best thing here is immediately, with within time, small span of time, the data can be available for the news channel. What is the problem here? The problem is the information which the local agent is giving according to their own wish. There can be personal bias of the correspondent. If the local agent is not well trained, the information can be wrong. So data collection is not, the collected from this method is not original, and they may be very less accurate as well. As we see the news channels, the information is not 100% right. So most of the time it happens, like newspapers, televisions, they regularly gives the information from various political and other happenings, and these data collected from the information in the local agents is not so reliable, not original, and less accurate. The fourth method, mailed questionnaires. What is questionnaires? Questionnaire means a sheet of paper where you have some questions. Usually questionnaires are giving you has been already MCQ kind of question, short questions, not long explanation type of questions are not there. So questionnaire is basically a set of question paper. What we can do is we can email the questionnaire to the person from where we need the response, and the person can fill the questionnaire and give us to. What does it mean? This method, questionnaire to be mailed, can be used, or we can say that it is usually used in academics. The research workers, the teachers, the scholars, they usually prepare the questionnaires and email it to different people from where they need the result. The advantage of this method is you can cover a large number of people. Simple email sending, in a very small time span you can give it to many people, and you can get it returned back as well by the people who are responding. So it is very less time consuming and less costly in terms of money as well. But the problem is that it is not suitable for the people who are not well equipped with the digital techniques, or not educated much. So they cannot submit or receive the email or respond it. So usually it is used in educated and enlightened people who are spread over a wide geographical area. You can use simply send an email from here to anywhere. So collection of data through email with this questionnaire is very easy for the people who can have an access to this. But there are some people who cannot use it. So this method cannot be used when the respondents are uneducated. Many times the informants do not respond to the questionnaires. This is also a problem. When we work for research work, suppose if I submit you a questionnaire and you will not fully fill that, then that can be a problem. I will not get the information complete. So that is a problem of this method. The last method given here is questionnaires to be filled by the enumerators. Now what does it mean by enumerator? Enumerator are those people who help the investigator in data collection. So enumerator contact the respondent, get the replies of the questionnaire and fill in their own handwriting, and the desired information is called a schedule, and this schedule is submitted to the investigator. This is used by higher educational authorities, or in case of population census all over the world, this method is being used, and this has merit over wide coverage, personal contact with the informants, and a fair degree of uniformity and accuracy in the information obtained. In this method, the problem is expensive and time consuming. It requires a large team of trained enumerators The people who are getting the information from the respondent must be well trained. Then only they can collect the exact and correct information. Otherwise, the information will not be complete. So, in order to collect the information properly, the enumerators must be trained, and there are requirement of more people to collect the entire data. So in that way, there are different methods of collecting the primary data from the source of origin. The 5 methods are discussed here. You need to do all the 5, but in brief. What the method is, what are the merits, and what are the demerits. Writing these 3 points under any heading will be enough for the explanation. Moving to the next part of this chapter, which is sources of collecting secondary data. Here we saw that primary data can be collected in these 5 ways. There are some other ways as well, but here we have discussed the important 5 methods. Next is sources of collecting secondary data. As I told you, secondary data means the data which is already collected by someone for the primary use, and now the person is using this for their own use. So secondary data can be collected from many sources. Some sources are published, some are unpublished. Published means there are some organization who uploads the data in internet or who publishes their informations and sources. They are called secondary data. What are these different sources? Include government publications like economic survey, census of India, reports and publications of national sample survey, annual reports of currency and finance, annual survey of industry, Reserve Bank of India bulletin, Indian Institute of Statistics. So there are many government publications, some semi-government publications like Food Corporation of India, and there are some private organizations as well. At the same time, we have some publications of research institution like National Council of Applied Economic Research, ISI. So these are all the sources which are published. There are some journals, newspaper is very common and simple example of source of published data. We get the many information from the newspaper, and that is a source of collecting a secondary data. There are annual reports of companies, some joint stock companies also, stock exchange. All these are the publications from where we can collect the secondary data. There are some unpublished sources as well. Some statistical data are published, but some are not published. What are they? Like in government companies, we see some internal records are there. In private agencies also, they have their own internal records. All those are unpublished sources. Unpublished sources may be available with many research institutions, individual scholars, trade associations, different universities, and these all informations are unpublished, but they can be used. These informations can only be used as secondary data with the permissions of these organizations. While using as data collected by other agency source, we have to take very precautions like reliability, suitability, and adequacy. But most importantly, we have to seek the permission of the organization before using unpublished sources. So data collected in the secondary phase can be published or it can be unpublished. The last part of this chapter, which we are going to discuss, is techniques or methods of data collection. So basically there are two important methods of collection of data: census method and sampling method. Census method is that method where we collect the required information from each and every unit of the population. What is population? Population means the entire source from where we need to collect the data. Let us discuss with example. If I want to find out the average monthly expenditure incurred on a particular brand of cold drink by 2000 students of our school, we shall have to collect the data about expenditure on of this brand of cold drink by each of these 2000 students. This is called census method. All the items means each and every student will give their own information that how much they spend in this particular brand of cold drink in 1 month. So that method is called census method. What we are doing? Total population is analyzed. Data is collected from each and every student because each and every student is a part of the population. The second one is sampling method. Sampling method means, what is a sample? Sample means a part of population. From the entire population, if I collect some part, that part can be called as sample. Now, under sampling method, data is collected from a selected number of sample, a selected number of units, which is called sample, from the relevant population. For example, the example which I have given, if I want to find out the average monthly expenditure for a particular brand of cold drink by 2000 students of our school, if I find the average monthly expenditure incurred by the on this cold drink by the student of our school, I can select few students from each class and collect the data from them. Like from each class, from class 5 from some student, class 7 some student, class 10 some students, class 12 some students. From each and every class I will select few students and I'll get the information from them, and total aggregate of that data if I analyze, I can get a sampling method data collection. So sampling method will give us the information from one particular sample, and that sample's information will be used for the entire population. The population will not be analyzed in each and every population part. In census method, we collect the data from each and every part of the population, but in sampling method, we collect a sample from the population and analyze that sample, and the result of that sample will be used for the entire population. And nowadays, sampling method is widely used. It is suitable when the size of population is very large. It is not possible to interact with each and every student. So when the population size is too large, we may not analyze each and every part of the population. Rather, we consider only one part of the population, which is a sample. We select a sample, analyze that sample, and say that the result is this. This can always be done when we check the quality of a product. We cannot check each and every unit of the product. What we can do is we can select randomly any one unit of the commodity. We can check the quality of that particular piece, and then we can say that the product quality is good or bad or up to what level of satisfaction. So this is very important and very widely used method of collecting data. So here we complete the very first part of this chapter, which is called collection of data. In our next part, we will understand the organization and presentation of data with tables, graphs, and diagrams. So till then, complete this part. I have assigned an assignment in the form of quiz. So answer that. After going through the video, go through your book and take care of yourself. Thank you.